Welcome back to Monday Musings, a casual conversation about culture and theology. I'm Justin Ely.
And I'm Daniel Chen. We're a couple guys talking about some stuff.
The stuff we're talking about today is part 3 of our series, The Techwise Family. We're using the book by Andy Crouch to talk about technology in our life and how we should use it, not misuse it, not overuse it. So this is going to be this part today talking about daily life in technology. So hopefully it'll be really helpful.
Yeah. And this will be more prevalent more and more as we go. Like, I can't even imagine what our kids are going to have when they're
Oh
our
my
age.
goodness. I know.
You know,
So true. So true. But we want to start with the life hack of the month. Daniel, what's your life hack?
So I think I'm going to stick with the food life hacks for the summer throughout the summer.
I like it.
And so, I'll give 2 today.
Okay.
So the first is, because I don't know how many people this will actually, the first one will impact, but when you're making homemade burgers, you can get on Amazon for like $5. It's super cheap, $10. Little sheets of wax paper, and they're just like burger sized wax paper. And if you make your own burgers, you just put your burger in a ball, put a piece of wax paper down, put the ball on top of the wax paper, take another piece of wax paper, smash it down, hassle free. And you just take it, and when you put it on the grill, you just put it meat side on the grill, and you just you just take the wax paper off, and it's the easiest way to make homemade burgers.
Oh, that's life changing.
Oh, well, then I'll save my other one then. But yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It is completely, we make burgers all the time now because it has gotten so easy to do because of the wax paper.
You start, is the bottom layer like a plate?
I take like a cookie sheet and I
Okay.
do wax, like, so you can do like long sheets of wax paper, but they make like individual burger sized pieces, and they're just like, I just take them from the box. It's super easy. I put one down, ball of meat. I used to use something to smash it. I just use my hands to smash it now. Wax paper, smash it. Next one. And then I just use the same piece of wax paper until I can't anymore to smash them. And then it's like, and then putting them on the grill, they don't fall apart. Like, um,
That's awesome.
it's just super easy. And so, I'll say a couple more things about burgers. One, when you cook steaks, as best you can should be closer to room temperature, so it doesn't seize up the meat. But with burgers, it doesn't matter. And actually, the closer it is to room temperature, it's going to lose its shape and form. And if you have like warm burgers, when you put them on the grill, they'll like fall through the grate sometimes. And so it's actually better to have colder burgers. The
Huh.
other thing too is I used to mix all of these like seasonings and Worcestershire and all this stuff into the meat, but really, if you watch all of the cooking shows, like the professionals, it's just salt and pepper on the outside of the burger. When you put it on the grill, that's it.
Interesting.
And so just a few more burger tips for you.
Well, there you go. That's good.
What about you?
So my life hack of the week actually comes from Shelby Landrum. Shelby, thank you. And she sent us an email talking about VidAngel, which is like a filtering service that you can filter. I think you buy it like on top of like your Netflix subscription.
Yes.
And then you can filter out categories like sex, violence, language, or even subcategories of those. On violence, you can have like graphic or non-graphic violence. On language, you can have like specifically the F word or whatever that you can filter out. And you're watching the same stuff you watch on Netflix, but it's filtered through your kind of personal selection. So really neat option for, Christian families that want to engage in entertainment from Netflix, but want to kind of guard their ears and their eyes from some of the really horrible things that are out there. So VidAngel could be a good life hack for you to enjoy Netflix without all the nastiness often associated with it.
Yeah. I've heard good things about it. I've never used it, but I'm really considering it, especially
Yeah.
For the kids, as we're, talking about. I mean, it's a good life hack for the, you know, the series we're doing.
The technology series, yeah.
And I think it makes me feel more comfortable that like I can let if I can just filter out everything on the front end, then I can kind of let my kids watch anything because I know that it'll skip all the stuff
Right.
that I don't like.
Yeah.
That actually seems really great.
It puts you in control. Yeah. All right. So we're gonna do part 3 of our series, the Techwise Family, and we're dealing with the section in Andy Crouch's book that's about daily life for technology. And we have 5 principles from him that we're going to go through and then just kind of talk about. And the first is this. This principle may be my biggest takeaway from when I read this book a couple years ago.
Okay.
And it's this. We wake up before our devices do, and they, quote, go to bed before we do. So, right, it's so often that so many of us use our phones as our alarms now, and it's right by our bed, and that phone is the last thing that we look at before we go to sleep, and it's the first thing we look at when we wake up.
Yeah.
And his advice is don't do that. And essentially put your phone to bed night before you go to bed in a different room somewhere else. And when I read this chapter, that's what I started doing. I started, my phone used to be right by my bed for an alarm. I started using a different alarm to wake up, and my phone goes in another room, and it goes in another room an hour and a half before I actually go to sleep. And it makes you feel a lot less enslaved to your device, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's something I really need to think about. Because I do that,
Yeah, it's so easy to.
And actually it's so bad that, and this is gonna make you laugh. So the first thing I used to do for years is the phone's next to my bed, the alarm goes off. Even if I don't look at that much, like uh at least I just check the phone to see if I got any texts or whatever. And I wake up, I roll over because I sleep on like if you're looking at the bed, the left side of the bed. So I roll over and I open only my left eye and I read whatever's on the screen. And then so for years, both of my eyes were the same prescription because I wear glasses and I wear contacts. And for the first time, like 2 years ago, my left eye is slightly worse than my right eye. And so for the past 2 years, when I wake up, I now close my left eye and only read with my right eye to see if I can balance it out.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, it actually has changed not only like my mind, but my actual eyesight.
That's hilarious. That's so funny. Yeah, one thing that I'm using the Gospel Coalition's devotional, the one D.A. Carson, for the love of God, for my Bible reading, and I get it emailed to me it gets emailed each morning at like 4 a.m.
Yep.
And I like to use Joshua Project or Operation World for my like prayer guide. But the problem with that is it causes me to be on my phone like for my like quiet time in the morning. And I'm thinking I should probably buy the for the love of God, like I have the devotional book and just use that instead of it would be nice to I'm pretty good at like putting my phone to bed, but waking up it is like the first thing I grab. I go into the other room and grab it. But it's a good idea to just not make that such an addictive thing.
It is funny because this is all I've known as an adult. I'm like,
right.
What did people used to do? Just like get up and like talk to their wife or something, something crazy like that.
Get up and sip coffee on your deck and look at the trees in your backyard. What kind of moron would do that?
Yeah. Why would you look at real trees when you can get perfectly good trees on your TV screen or your phone?
All right. Next principle. And this is a hard one. I think this will be, I think we'll have good discussion on this. He said, we aim for no screens before double digits at school and at home. So he comments the best and richest experiences of learning, it turns out, are embodied ones. He says the last thing you need when you are learning at any age, but especially in childhood, is to have things made too easy. And then he says, we often give our children screens not to make their lives easier, but to make our lives easier. Um, so he talks about for their household, they like didn't have a TV until all their kids were like above 10. And I'm like, man, props to you, but I don't even know. That's just crazy to me.
Do you know what year this was written?
Let me look at the copyright.
I only asked that because
2017.
2017. I mean, even in the past 6 years, I don't. If you go to public or private school, maybe you could get away with that if you homeschool.
I think he homeschooled.
Okay. If you go to private or public school, I don't even know that's possible anymore.
Yeah,
They all like they have like a school given like laptop or
yeah.
iPad after like second grade or something. It's crazy.
We Hillary and our oldest took a tour of the elementary school we're going to, and yeah, even in the kindergarten class, they have like iPad labs, and they structure the day kind of like putting kids in like cohorts and stuff, and use of technology is a part of that learning experience. So
Yeah.
yeah, unless you're doing homeschool, I don't know if you could fully.
And it's funny, even in 2017, that might not have been the case, you know?
Sure.
And so I do think, I think the principle here is just to maybe limit the amount of screen time. And it's kind of like, we talk about in parenting that freedom goes hand in hand with responsibility.
Sure.
And maybe screens falls under part of that too, right?
Yeah.
I just like I get what he's going for, and I'm like, maybe I just like am undisciplined or something. I'm just like, I don't understand. I'm like, I can't even do this rule because I've already broken it, I guess, because
Right.
my kids use screens and stuff. And I think there's a lot of benefit to screens, um, even for young kids, but I think the amount of time is really what I would be concerned about.
Yeah. He says this, which I think is helpful. He says, so legalism in this area, like any other, is unwise and unhelpful, but we can still radically limit the amount of time our children spend directly engaging with screens in their youngest years. First, eliminate passive screen time at home. Televisions or videos playing in the background with no one even really paying attention. Then reduce or eliminate unaccompanied screen time, the games and videos that substitute for individual play and reading. Then take the more challenging step of reducing social screen time, figuring out how to challenge children to play together in tactile, creative, self-initiated, and self-sustaining ways. Our family also eliminated advertising supported television entirely with the simple step of not buying a TV until our children were in double digits. And even then, only very occasionally, perhaps once a month, we would watch an intentionally chosen movie together. But I like you can at least the eliminating passive screen time that happens in a
Yeah.
lot of homes. It's just always on in the background. Cut it off. Um, Eliminate unaccompanied screen time. Go play in the backyard. Go play.
Right.
Go build a fort in the basement. Go. Um, I think that's very helpful. He says the less we rely on screens to occupy and entertain our children, the more they become capable of occupying and entertaining themselves.
Yeah.
So even if you're not eliminating it entirely, that's a helpful paradigm. Um, and then that kind of ties into the next principle he talks about. We use our screens for a purpose, and when we use them together rather than using them aimlessly and alone. Um, yeah, he talks about. Let's see if I can find this quote in this chapter, but uh, he says, so when we do sit down in front of a TV screen, it will be for a specific purpose and with a specific hope, not just of entertainment or distraction, but of wonder and exploration. When we do scroll through social media, it will be to have a chance to give thanks for our friends, enjoy their creative gifts, and pray for their needs, rather than just something to take our mind off our tedium. I think that's a really helpful uh, idea of just being purposeful with the use of technology.
Yeah.
I'm not just going to sit here and just totally veg out and die. I'm going to purposely engage in some entertainment, or I'm not just going to scroll social media just to lose my mind, but I'm going to give thanks for my friends and be purposeful in it.
Yeah.
I so often don't do this, but I think it's a helpful paradigm.
Yeah. This reminds me, I was watching this YouTube video, of course, this morning,
Of course.
uh, about a like psychological phenomenon called behavioral sync. And basically this researcher created did years of research creating building societies for like mice.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and this particular one called Universe 25, he basically created a utopia where mice didn't have to work or work for food. Like everything was provided for. It was like, you know, it was basically this big home essentially that was created, like not an actual house, but it was in a laboratory, but like a mouse home.
Sure.
And all the food was provided for. They didn't have to do any of the normal like mice things. And you know what happened? They reproduced to a certain level, and then when all the mice lost purpose and what they were supposed to do, they started like killing each other. They stopped procreating.
Huh.
Even in the mice, like you saw homosexual tendencies, asexual tendencies start to come out. um you saw
Interesting.
laziness, you saw people like moms refusing to take care of the young and all this stuff. And basically, his conclusion was overpopulation causes this.
Huh.
But really what I was thinking about was when you lose the your purpose of your created design,
Yeah.
you're like it's the individual, and then the society starts to fall apart.
Yeah. It's
And
so
it's
true.
like, all the stuff you see a lot going on in the country right now with um like all the LGBTQ stuff, all this stuff going on is because we live in the wealthiest, most comfortable country
Yes.
that's ever lived. And
Yes.
what I'm getting back to is with the technology is that the technology only reinforces that.
Yeah. Yep.
It does so much for your life that you don't like. Technically with Google, do you even need to quote unquote go to school to learn anything? Like you just learn everything on YouTube and Google. You know what I
Sure.
mean? But
Hmm.
there's something just so important to our intrinsic design,
Yep.
being made in the image of God, to actually go learn those things on our own, to work with our hands, to go play outside.
Yep.
And I love this idea of like using the screens for a purpose, because it can easily become just take over. It can take over our purpose,
Sure.
that the technology. And if we let us do that,
Absolutely.
the individual and the society will break down.
Yeah.
And I think like just even more than just like an individual perspective, I think it's bad for society to let, I mean, this kind of goes back to our AI one, right?
Yep.
To fully take over the things that give people purpose
Yeah.
and a work to do.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said. Yeah. Yeah. The fourth principle he shares in this section of the book is car time is conversation time. And he points out that most conversations take 7 minutes to really actually begin.
That's so
And
interesting.
if they're interrupted throughout, you can't like if your conversation is interrupted multiple times through looking at a tweet, looking at Facebook, texting someone, it stops the conversation, even if you think it's continuing. So you'll never get into the deep end of the pool of conversations if you constantly have interruptions.
That's
And
interesting.
and so instead of throwing a screen at your kid every time you're in the car, or everyone putting on their own headphones and listening to their own music, using the car time as conversation time, instead of go into your own world and do your own thing. And I think he mentions if you do music, do it together. Pick songs together and sing in the car together.
Yeah, we do a
Don't
lot of
live in
that.
your own world. Um,
You know what's funny? Like I'm so blessed. You might be like this too, but I'm like I rarely go anywhere during the week that takes more than 7 minutes.
I know it's
And so
great.
I'm like, well, I guess we never have conversations
Yeah,
anyways.
never have deep conversations. Yeah, I so sometimes it's funny. We'll see each other in the preschool carpool lane, a few
Yeah.
times a week. Sometimes we're dropping our kids off, and sometimes my kids are like super chatty after school, and sometimes they're like totally silent the whole ride home. You
Yeah.
know, yesterday was the last day of class for my almost 3-year old Sarah, and so I picked them up and I was asking about their day, and I was like, "Sarah, are you sad that school's over?" She was like, "No." I was like,
Sarah's hilarious.
"All right, do you gonna miss your class and stuff?" No. Like, okay, it was a great year. You're ready for summer, huh? Uh, so there you go. Car time
That's
is conversation time, even if
that
that is sometimes just yes and no answers.
and it's like uh we had a parenting seminar this past weekend at our church,
It was so good.
and part of the discussion our table had was like, how do you get your teenagers to talk to you? And it's like you get them to talk to you by using the 5 minute car time
Yes.
driving to places for conversations when they're 3, so they'll actually talk to you when you're 15 because that's what they know.
Yep. Yep.
You know,
So
it,
true.
it makes
Create a
so
safe,
much.
safe place. Yeah.
It just, yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and it's in the little things. We're people who tend to over focus on big things, big
Yeah.
events, big.
Yep.
How do I do the big thing for my kid or whatever? But really, how do we, as we parent our kids, it's doing with excellence all the little things, including the 3 minute car rides, right?
Something
It's
I really appreciated about it was Paul Tripp in the parenting seminar that he talked about was one, he really emphasized this is a 1,000 conversations that happen over 15 years, that it's just little drops here and
Yep.
there.
Mm-hmm.
And so he talked about that, I feel like multiple times. And then he talked about like having a harvesting mentality, and
Yep.
essentially you reap what you sow. And so sow into your kids these like little conversations throughout the way, and you'll reap a great harvest over time if you do that. Uh,
Yep.
so helpful. And then the last principle that Andy Crouch gives for kind of daily life with technology is spouses have one another's passwords and parents have total access to their children's devices. Um, be an interesting conversation here. Uh, I feel less need on the first part and more need on the second part.
Definitely.
So I don't, I know like some of Hillary's like generic passwords. We both have just kind of our generic ones we use. Um, I feel zero need ever to like open her phone and look at anything
Right.
or look at her email account. Um, I'd be curious what you think. To me, if you feel like the need to do that, there's probably something else already wrong.
Right.
Um, I guess I could. Like I
I
don't think
I
she'd be
think the
opposed to that, but I don't feel the need to do that whatsoever. I trust her entirely. So I don't, you know,
I think the principle here is like, would you be comfortable with your spouse at any point in time going through your phone?
right.
And if
Yeah.
the answer is yes, then I mean, that's the principle, right? That's fine.
Right.
There's
And yeah,
trust built there. There's, like, yeah, we talked about this in the first section, the first podcast. I'm like, I have 230 passwords or whatever. Like, I
right.
don't know off the top of my head a single password.
Yeah.
And so like I'm like, I don't even know my passwords. Meredith definitely doesn't know any of my passwords. So but that's
Yeah.
not because I'm trying to hide something from her. Like if she at any point in time can check anything at any time, I don't care. And I think that's the principle,
Right.
right?
Right. So yeah, I think that's good. And I guess some couples choose to have joint email accounts or things of that nature. We haven't done that, but I
You,
guess
you
that's
know,
one way to do it.
I'm gonna throw it out there and say I think joint Facebook accounts are kind of weird.
Yeah. Then whose birthday is it?
Yeah, I'm just like, I don't know. Just have each other's passwords, I guess, for that. I don't care. I don't understand the point. I don't really understand the point of that.
Yeah.
Because maybe it's like, oh, it's really like the wife uses it, but the husband doesn't. And I'm like, just have your own Facebook account that your husband never uses. I don't get it,
Yeah. I don't. Yeah. Um. Yeah. So, but I think having trust there is important. And then, but having total access to kids' devices, I'm like 100%.
I
Like,
don't understand why that's even debatable.
yeah. Even if, even with like, so because I like fully trust Hillary, I just can't imagine a scenario where I would randomly just pick up her phone and start looking through her text. But with my kids, I will absolutely do that. Um, on a regular occurrence. Just, I mean, that's just going to be part of it. Like part of the, whenever we give them a phone, part of the deal is going to be just so you know, whenever we want to, we're going to look through stuff. Um, and that's just the way it
Yeah,
is.
this isn't your
So
phone. This is my phone.
this is
And
my
I'm
phone
letting
that I'm
you,
letting you borrow.
you're right. No, and I think there's a lot of apps out there too, but Apple, I'm not the biggest like push Apple out there kind of guy, but they have really, really great parental controls.
Yeah,
And so like watch a YouTube video, learn how to use them. I'm pretty sure you can even do a setting on a phone where like you can look at all of the text messages and you don't even need to be on their physical phone. You can
sure.
just request it to your phone.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure I don't quote me on that. It's been a little bit since I've read all the stuff, but I'm pretty sure that's an option. But like, my kids have an iPad that they get to use like, to play educational games or whatever every
Sure.
now and then or whatever. But you can lock it down. Like
Yeah.
I downloaded Amazon Prime and you can't even click the app and open it without a password because
Yes. Beautiful.
I set the age restriction at 5. And so if there's one thing on there, Netflix, whatever, that that is above the 5-year-old range that they set, it won't even open. I mean, it's
Yeah.
wonderful.
That's
They
great.
can't download any apps without me. They can't like you can't do anything on the iPad without a password. So
That's great.
yeah,
Beautiful. Yeah, he writes in the book, our home internet is filtered by the open DNS service, which constantly updates and blocks sources of sexually explicit content as well as other objectionable material. We also waited until our children were nearly at the end of high school to provide them phones with independent data plans that could circumvent our home internet. So I mean, there are ways to keep things locked down based upon the kind of phones you give or the kind of
yeah.
Wi-Fi that you put in your home.
Honestly, yeah, I probably uh there's a couple at our church, the Seymours, and they were telling me that their kids have these phones that look it's called Gab or something like that, that they look like iPhones. They're like, they got the big screens or whatever, but there's no internet access and they get to set the restrictions on who they can text and what time they can text and stuff. I'm like, that's wonderful. Like,
Fantastic.
I think that's
Yes.
what we're gonna do. Give
Yep.
them phones that look
Yes.
like iPhones, and then I'm like, I'm not giving you internet access. Like,
Right.
why do you need that?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So really good principles for daily life with technology. So next week we're going to kind of bring a conclusion. His final part of the book is called "What Matters Most," and it's why singing matters and in sickness and in health. So be an interesting conclusion to our series. But any kind of final thoughts on daily life with technology?
No, I think just being aware. I mean, I think for both of us, it's just really easy to get stuck in a rhythm or do what's easy. And I
Yeah,
think this is just a good reminder to do what is best for our kids in particular.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us for Monday Musings to talk about the Techwise family. We will talk to you next week as we conclude our series.